We're getting really close now. My straps are back inside my bag, and I'm going to pin right sides together so my outside is turned inside out and my denim liner is right side out. On this bag, I'm going to match these sides, match these seams up. This is where, once this is stitched, it's going to be hard to top stitch that. And I try to keep this strap going straight down. So this bag is a little different because I've offset my seam. So I've got one here and one here. And so what I'm going to do is, before I even put it in there, I'm going to put a pin on these edges that I want to match to my seams. And that's going to allow me to do my final steps with a lot less trouble. Okay, so I'm going to match this pin to this seam. It's a very good idea to double check that your magnet closure lines up exactly before you finalize this pinning. And I'm going to match this pin. I'm going to use my top stitching as my second row of stitching, so I'm just going to stitch this once. But if I go crooked anywhere, I will come back and straighten out that area. I won't pick out unless I have to, but I'll just go straight anywhere that I've wavered off into my seam allowance. So now that I'm all pinned up, I'm going to stitch around this at 5/8. These types of critical seams where you're joining pieces that have a lot of different parts and they all need to be lined up properly for your work to look professional and nice and function well, always give my little clothespin a workout. I use it to move the fabric around as I go, as you can see, tucking in seams and tucking in things where they belong, propping my foot before and after I go up over those bulky seams, and the straps. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of reach in here and make sure that my seam is all pressing towards the color wash, and having the straps go this way up here instead of pull down here will help make that happen. And then I'm just going to kind of press. If I was very concerned about the fibers that I couched onto this purse or any of the other elements, I would turn this inside out and press from the other side, or use a pressing cloth. So just be careful that you don't ruin any of your work while you're pressing. I don't want this red to show up here like this in some spots and not others, so I'm gonna kind of carefully attempt to press this. And I'll work my way around. I'm going to top stitch around here using my edger foot, and I've moved this to 1/2 inch. If it is helpful to you to pin this to do this, you should do that. These straps are a little cumbersome, but if you go slowly and carefully, you can get through it. I'm going to start with some tiny stitches. This would be another time when top stitching thread would be nice. I've never really thought about it, but watching myself sew to edit these videos, I realized that the most important tool you really have to make your sewing look nice is your hands, shaping and feeding the work and making sure that everything is just right as it goes through and your needle hits the fabric. Now you're going to see why I offset this seam on the other bag. You can see these seams match up. This is very bulky, and I could trim that out a little bit inside there, but I'm going to show you what it's like when my machine tries to get through that with this large size 18 needle and the same setup as the one I just did, basically. Okay, so I'm just going to let the video in the corner run and show you what happened as I was trying to finish my top stitching. I think some of the issues with my thread breaking and shredding and skipping stitches and all of that were caused by the hairy fibers on this bag that I've never had loose like this when I was working on it, because as I said in the earlier video, couching tends to bury all those threads if you use a couching foot. And at any rate, some of the problems with the top stitching happen no matter what if you try to stitch through all this. And so I've made a little mock-up to show you what I'm talking about. This mock-up shows that when you take this intersection where you've got two pieces that are joined together like this, and then you take those two pieces and you join them like this, and so it ends up like this, you've got a lot going on here. At this point, I've got 2 layers of fabric and a layer of batting, and then again, and then again, and then again. So I have 8 layers of fabric and 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of batting on each side of this seam. And then when I turn this, as we do on our bag edge, and I go to top stitch through here, you're adding all of this where you've got 3, 6, 9, 12 layers, and you're adding 3, 6, 9, 12 layers again. You've got 24 layers total, 8 batting, 16 fabric, and then you're going to top stitch through that. Now there are other things you can do. You could take like this little mock-up and you could trim this all down, and you can grade this seam allowance. And if you don't know what grading is, it would be if you made this even more pronounced, that one is shorter than the other, and you cut all this down. And you can do that, but then your top stitching, if I top stitch right through all this, it's going to tend to reinforce all of this stitching together of this piece. If I'm going to do this, then like this, and then top stitch this down, then at the minimum I'm going to need to come and double stitch this for one thing, which is fine, that's easy to do. And then when I do this, I'm going to have a lot less bulk to go through, and I can do that. I can trim and grade that, and I can stitch through here. But another one of the things that I like with leaving everything long is I'm also leaving my strap long in there, and so it's getting reinforced with my top stitching when I come through. And you know, for each situation and each person who's making things, you have whatever is your priority. For me, my priority is that someone doesn't spend $200 buying a very nice bag from me and then come back disappointed because it ripped open in a spot that shouldn't rip open easily. And so I tend to overbuild, I tend to double stitch, I tend to try to do everything I can to make it durable so that it doesn't fail in the first place. And if it does, I know that I've done everything I can. If you're just sewing for yourself or for a gift, you know, do whatever seems right. But for me, with the way that I want to reinforce this top, this isn't what I do. If I were just making a bag just to make one for myself, probably my first prototype for sure just had this, and then I would top stitch through there. And that's fine, you know. The point where you go to sell it to someone you don't even necessarily know and won't ever see again. I do this, but I offset these two seams. When you open my bag, what you see is a line of stitching here and a line of stitching there. And so when I stitch around this and come through this critical area here, I don't have all that extra bulk in there. I have a little bit of bulk there, and I have a little bit of bulk there, just like I have a little bit where my straps are. But I don't struggle excessively. I don't shred thread. I don't need to start up again and again, which I was having to do to make these the way that I wanted. So that's the skinny on that. So you've probably noticed the tendency with the jeans for the front to be shorter than the back. And I'm going to use a binder clip. I'm not going to clip on top of my magnet, but I'm going to clip these edges to hold them even while I'm working down here, so that I don't accidentally pull one side too short. And then what I'm going to do is, you can see this is wider down here, and you can make that smaller if you want, but I don't think it's necessary in most cases. I want to draw a line that is basically straight with the bottom of my bag. And I'm gonna use chalk. Since my corners under there are already boxed. So then what I'm gonna do, I want my liner to be longer than my bag. I just think it makes it less likely to pull in an odd way on the different bag parts if this oddly shaped liner isn't the shape that's holding the weight at the bottom of your bag. So what I'm trying to do is approximate how this needs to be sewn. I'm going to turn this and just to keep them out of trouble, I'll put these way back in there. And now I want to leave a big hole for turning this out. Again, because this is a pair of pants made to fit the human body, this stuff isn't flat, so we're working around that. So I transfer my pins and I try to get this nice and flat and account for the fact that the edges of the purse are going to be boxed, and I take a little time with this. I just don't like to go too fast and forget about something, because you really don't want to have to extend this with another piece of denim or anything like that. You just want to make it fit the first time. And so I just take some time and get this to the point that I can stitch it. And once I have it sized right to where I want it, I will stitch it a second time, but for right now, I need to get this just to the right size. And these corners are going to get boxed off. It'll actually be like this. And so I'm not going to backstitch. Just going to go through here. Medium-sized stitch that I can rip out. I will backstitch here in case that ends up being my permanent stitching. I usually get these pretty good the first time now, but in the beginning I would redo these over and over again until they were just right. This is so much bigger than I need that I'm going to trim it down a little. And now I'm just going to pin this. And I had this one boxed at 1 1/4, so this I'm just going to kind of eyeball. This isn't like a critical part. So again, I'm turning this into a pointy end here that I can pin at about what would be 1 1/4 from the end. And then I'm going to try this out. Just work it through. We're going to have to go back again if we don't like the size of this bottom. Be careful, there are pins. So if I stick my hand in there and push out my bag corners first. Now I need to pull this out of here a little bit and see that if I were to continue the line that I have already. I pin very close to the edge because I'm planning to stitch very close to the edge. If I put that back in there, corners into my corners, this is what the inside of that purse will look like. And it isn't tight. And what I do now is, there's my patch. I'm going to load this up with just random stuff that's laying around the sewing room, and I'm going to carry it around the house for a few minutes and see if I think that it's hanging weird or if it's going to work well. So here this bag is. I think it passes the test. What I'm looking for are diagonal ripples or arcing ripples on the outside of the bag. So my bag is still turned this way and I'm just pulling this little end out. So I'm going to restitch this part. I just like to get through this part as quickly as I can, restitching and then boxing the corner. I'll trim this out a little extra so that I can see what I'm doing. Box my corner, stitching it twice. Trim the corners, again at 1/2 or 5/8. Pull out the other corner and do it in the same manner. Once this is done, we'll match up our two edges and pin them carefully and then stitch them very close to the edge so that it just closes that edge and looks nice in the bottom of the bag. A few finishing touches that would make this really nice, in addition to grooming those hairs that I talked about and sewing buttons on, which I would do with pliers in the very thick areas of my thread sketching. Beading you could do, which would be nice. I would keep it small and only do it on one side, and I would use a strong thread like Nymo. You can clean up your edges on any raw edge applique that you might have added. I don't actually spray the bags myself anymore, but I do say on my card that Scotch guarding is recommended, or the similar type of spray used by the manufacturer's instruction.